What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the Porta Fortress and hopefully going over some things that can help you stop losing to it in Zero Build. As always, if you guys do enjoy this video, find it helpful and informative, remember to give a like, subscribe if you like to see more, and comment down below what you think of the Porta Fortress, because I know I've seen a decent amount of comments of people complaining about it, but I actually like how it has changed the game, and I'll probably get to that later on in the video. If you guys do hate it, though, I'm not sure how much longer it's going to be in the game, because this upcoming Thursday is the Season 7 and 8 update for Fortnite OG, and the Porta Fortress was vaulted in Season 7 of Chapter 1. At this point, we don't really know exactly, if they're going to stay perfect with the loot pools. There have been some deviations from how things were back in the day, so the Porta Fortress may be on its way out in just a few days. So if you are someone that hates it, that's a good thing for you. The first thing we're going to talk about is just how you want to push this Porta Fortress. And I think it's best to push it with some form of mobility, obviously, but the best two are going to be the grappler, the plunger grappler thing, and the shockwaves. I think the grappler is actually the best, though, because you can grapple onto something and it will allow you to mantle up. And when you're pushing the fortress, I think it's best to just want to go for a corner away from the player inside. So if you have, the player playing, like the player or like the players inside are kind of close to like the front left corner, then maybe you want to go for like the back left corner or the back right corner, or maybe even the front right corner. You just want to be in some corner away from the opponent, not directly on them. You want to have a decent amount of range to them, and when you're in this corner, you have like the cone for cover, and you can peek this decently well. And a lot of players, when you grapple onto them, will think you're going to land right on them. So instinctually, they kind of like pull out their shotgun and get ready for a close range fight, because they're like, okay, this guy's landing on me, he's going to fight me. But when you go to one of these corners, not only do you have a decent amount of cover, but you're probably going to be decently far from the opponent, and that's what is about to happen. And like I said, a lot of players will instinctually go to their shotgun when you do this, thinking you're landing right on them, but when you're in the corner, you're decently far from them, and the shotguns don't have very much range this season. Even the pump, its range is not good. So if you go to this corner, you have good cover, you're in like a medium range fight, you're making a medium range fight. So if you just go for your AR, you're going to like easily melt any of the other players that just play off the shotgun. Now, if they get up on you, then sure, you're going to need to pull out your shotgun. But most of the time that I've pushed these, I've been able to get the player really weak or just straight up eliminate them with my AR while they think they're having a shotgun fight. And this will be a little more difficult to work out in team game modes, because there's more players for you to eliminate. If it's a full squad in there, it's going to take you longer to get that kill than if it's solos. But the point still stands. If you go for this corner, you're going to have cover, you're going to be more protected, you're going to be in a range that probably is going to catch the opponents off guard, because a lot of people think you're going to land on them and they're going to go straight for their shotgun. So even if you don't clean up the entire team super fast, you're probably going to be at the very least able to get a pick while the other players don't realize they're in a medium range fight. You have cover for it. It's just a huge advantage for you, and you won't end the fight right away, but once you get that pick and you have that numbers advantage, you have a huge advantage in the fight. And, if this is a team game mode, you maybe want to coordinate with your teammates of going to different corners on the Porta Fort. That way the opposing players have to worry about multiple angles. I know some players struggle to kind of communicate with their teammates and convince their teammates to do things. So if you see your teammate going for one of the corners, go for one of the different ones, and then you kind of have that crossfire naturally set up just by playing off your teammates. You don't really need to influence them as much. So that's like the biggest kind of thing I would say, is that if you're pushing a Porta Fortress, don't try to land right on the person. Try to get on one of the corners. That way you have cover. You don't want to take that 50-50 fight. Like, sure, if you do land right on them, you can maybe win that fight, but it's one of those things where it's just more risky than it needs to be. And in a lot of fights in Fortnite OG, like, the third parties are crazy. So like this, as soon as you start fighting one player for control of their Porta Fortress, the third parties are going to come in. So you want to get that kill as cleanly as possible, especially end game, and the Porta Fortresses are huge end game. Another thing that you can do is, if you have shockwaves, you can kind of shockwave yourself up into the air, especially if there's any sort of like terrain near the Porta Fortress that gives you some height. Like if it's near a hill or a house or something, get on the house and then shockwave yourself up. And then when you're in the sky, you have multiple options. You can throw more shockwaves down on the players inside, and this will force them out of the Porta Fortress. And this can be a really good play to go for in team game modes. If you and your team want to push a fortress, maybe have one player open the fight was shockwaving some people out of the fortress, because there's a lot of ways this can go. You can maybe knock them all out of the Porta Fortress, which is going to be a huge, advantage for you. And in solos, this is decently easy to do since you only have to knock one person out of it. But if it's in squads, maybe you just knock 2 out. And then there's 2 people left in the Porta Fortress and 2 people outside the Porta Fortress. And then your team probably has a huge advantage in that fight. You can kind of kill the people inside and then deal with the players that got forced out afterwards. Just separating that team gives you a huge advantage. Even if you do kind of, like I said, you don't have the best shockwave and you just knock 1 or 2 out, that's going to be isolating them from the fight. And that's going to make it easier for you to win the fight, because you potentially have 2 like 4v2s separated rather than just a straight up 4-on-4. So shockwaving people out of the Porta Fortress can be a nice play to go for. You can also just shockwave yourself up and then shoot an RPG down if you have something like that, or boogie bombs can be great for this as well. You just shockwave yourself up, throw the boogies down on the players inside, and if you are in a team game mode, you can, even if you don't boogie all of the players, it should be a way for you to get some sort of picks in the fight, because like I said, it's kind of the same thing with the shockwaving out. If you only boogie 2 of the players, well, then those people can't contribute to the fight, and you can just leave them boogied and then focus the people that aren't boogied, clean them up, and then by the time the people are done dancing, you can finish them. So this is just the 2 easiest ways to deal with it, I think, is to either just go straight for one of the corners and play that mid-range fight. And if you do this like kind of decisively, you'll often get the upper hand in the fight before the person in the fortress kind of even realizes that it's a mid-range fight and not a close-range fight. Or if you do have shockwaves, you can go for some sort of play where you force them out of the bunker, or combo your shockwaves with something like the rockets or the boogie bombs to make it even easier for you to eliminate the opponent. A lot of players say that they just like dealing with the Porta Fortress with explosives, and this can work out, but I think it's very risky because it leaves you vulnerable to the other players in the lobby and the person in the fortress. Like ideally, especially if you're in game, you would like to kind of get that fortress, eliminate the person inside, and then now you have control of it. And in game, this can be a huge advantage for you. Whereas like if you're destroying the fortress and you're not going to be able to use it later on, and it's probably going to take longer. So like dynamite can work well for destroying the fortress if you kind of throw it at the bottom, because dynamite destroys a lot of structures. But when it comes to using something like the grenade launcher or RPG, this can work, but it's going to take a lot more time for the rockets to do something than the person you're fighting to like damage you. Like each RPG rocket you go for is a potential chance for the person in the fortress to like beam you back, and it's probably going to take you several rockets. Like I've been in a fortress before when someone was rocket spamming me, and it was really just a matter of time before I got decent tags on them and was able to like push that fight into a kill. So like they're shooting rockets at my fortress and kind of destroying it piece by piece, right? All I have to do is get a few AR shots on them in one moment when they peek, and then that is like a actual advantage for me in the fight, then I can push them. The fact that I already got like 50, 60, 70 damage makes it easier to translate that into a kill, where they're just spamming out rockets, hoping that eventually my fortress doesn't exist anymore, and then we're kind of on like a neutral fight. So I don't really like the idea of spamming it with explosives. Maybe if you're in team game modes and like your entire team is doing it, that can work a little bit faster, but it scales up the amount of people shooting at you as well, and eventually one of those people is probably going to get a decent tag, and then that kind of puts you at a disadvantage. And then there's also the other players in the lobby. If it's a 1v1v1, one player's in the fortress, you start rocketing it, the other player might just start shooting you, even though you're kind of doing both of you an advantage. So I really don't like the idea of spamming rockets or spamming explosives to try to destroy the fortresses, because I feel like it takes way too long for it to actually be destroyed, and you're making yourself a target the entire time and putting yourself at a potential disadvantage if you do ever get tagged. And like I said, you don't get the fortress in the end, you just destroyed it. Whereas like if you push the people inside and eliminate them, now you have the fortress in game. And since the Porta Fortress was added, I feel like most Zero Build end games have kind of played out around fortresses. So like if you're not the player camping it, like you have a huge disadvantage going into that fight. So the more comfortable you get, I think, at like pushing these fortresses and playing these fights out, the more likely it is for you to win an in-game in Zero Build. At least that's kind of how I view it. It is risky to go for, but at the end of the day, doing that is going to be what helps you get wins in the season. And this is kind of like what I said, where A lot of people dislike the Porta Fortresses, but I actually like it because I would rather have an end game that plays out where like, okay, this guy has a fortress. I'm going to go make this play and push him and then get control of this and then use that to win the game. Whereas like last week in Zero Build, I feel like a lot of the end games were just kind of about who was more patient, and you just kind of waited until zone finally forced someone to make a play. And I feel like the end games now are a lot more proactive. That could be because of the addition of the Porta Fortress, or just kind of the nature of the game. It's always a little like slower paced when a new season starts. Like people, want to get that win more. They want to camp more. So really could be one or the other, but I do think Porta Fortresses change the end game a decent amount, and the better you get at fighting them and the more comfortable you get at pushing them, the more likely it is that you're going to win for as long as they're in the game. Another thing that you can do is just carry the fortress yourself, and then when you get shot, you can throw it down, and then now you have this huge base. And if you do have an enemy fortress that's in an area and you want to like deal with that, one thing you can do is grapple into their base and then just throw your own fortress, and it will stack on top of theirs, and then now you just have like height on them, and then they have to worry about pushing you, either going for like a grapple up to the corner or just coming up the predictable tire route. That's another reason why I think grappling to the corner and just playing that is really good, because a lot of players just kind of tunnel vision the bottom part, thinking that's the only way people can get in. Or if there's any sort of terrain advantage around their fortress, like let's say you don't want to just go in, but if theirs is kind of next to a hill, or there's some way you can get height on them, if you throw your fortress on that higher piece of ground than theirs, you're probably going to be able to look down into them, and that's going to give you an advantage in that fight. Maybe you get some decent opening tags, and then you can push that. But that is going to be it in this video. I think the easiest way to get it is just to push the corner, play for the AR fight. And a lot of players are going to get caught off guard by that, because they just hear people grappling on them or using mobility to get on them, and they think it's about to be a close range fight, or they think people are pushing them. They think it's going to be a close range fight on like the bottom part. You get the corner, you should be able to get an easy kill. At least that's how it's played out for me so far. Since the Porta Fortress has been added, and I really haven't had a hard time pushing them in Fortnite Zero Build, but let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you enjoy the fortresses being in the game, if you hate it. I like the end game being a little more proactive and less just kind of like waiting around, and less like kind of like trading snipe shots back and forth. But let me know what you guys think. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, subscribe if you like to see more, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.